Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's session, Start Tusk Museums Unite. Before we get started and I turn it over to our fantastic moderator and panelists today, I want to review a few tech things with you all. First, as always, this session is being recorded. You will receive these recordings after the conference concludes today. Few things about the chat feature. We are using the chat and it is enabled for you all to ask questions, share comments, respond to questions that are posed by the panelists and the moderator, and to share resources. Keep in mind to request the opportunity to speak and ask a question directly to the panelists. You will go to the panelists tab and click the raised hand option in the lower left-hand corner. As always, if you have any technical problems at all, please email dl@ohiohistory.org. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful session moderator and panelists. Take it, Wendy.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of the Ohio Local History Alliance. Hope everybody's having a great conference. You are joining us today in the hashtag Start Tusk Museum Unite panel. And I'm Wendy Zuckel, director of the Denison Railroad Depot Museum. I hope that everybody, I've got my coffee, it's a cold Saturday morning and my candles burning, so let's all just sort of relax into this very informative session. And I'm going to introduce our panelists. Today we have a great group of people to talk. And we're going to let them talk, and at the end we'll do questions. So we have Anna Young, who's the administrative assistant of the Massillon Museum. She joined the Massillon team in 2019. That's a great team of people. And she handles all the social media, digital content, and online calendars for that museum. We also have joining us Christy Davis, who is the curator of exhibitions at the Canton Museum of Art. Prior to that, for 12 years, she was the registrar at the Football Hall of Fame. And just a little note to let you know, she was our first vice president at the Ohio Local History Alliance and is going to be president. So we're excited to see Christy in that capacity. Our third speaker, very familiar to many of us, Kimberly Kenney, executive director of the McKinley Presidential Museum. Kim has been serving there prior to that 18 years as curator, knows that museum backwards and forwards and spends extra time. I don't know how she finds it. She's written 8 books. So we're glad to have Kim with us today. And our last speaker is Jennifer Hyland, who's president and CEO of the National First Ladies Library. Jen has a huge background in research and art conservation, working at a wide variety of museums, including Indianapolis Museum of Art and the World of Coca-Cola. And she just has a very strong passion for art and history. So these are our 4 illustrious speakers. Very excited to have them today. And if Anna, you want to go ahead and start, we have a PowerPoint slide if you want to share that. We can get started. So I would invite everybody, if you want to chat, you can use the chat, but if you would like to share questions and answers, use the Q&A and we will go through that at the end of the session. So I'm actually the moderator, but somehow became a panelist in this group. And just to give you some background of what happened, if everybody can recall those tense days when it became very apparent our museums were going to close because of the pandemic. And we were all, just suddenly trying to figure out what's happening, what should we do? And I always like to connect with other museum leaders. And of course, one of my favorites is Alex Kuhn at the Massillon Museum. She always has her finger on the pulse of what's going on. So I gave her a call and I'm like, what are you doing up there up north? And one of the things that we quickly were doing was finding a way to remain visible, even though we were going to close, and connect with our audiences and make sure we could still find outlets to fulfill our missions. And lucky for me, Alex had already been talking to her peers in Stark County, which included many of our panelists today. And so I sort of got in. It was a fortuitous call because at that moment I wasn't in Stark County, I was in Tusk County. And she said, she's such a generous leader that, come on, join us in this effort. So off we went on this effort for cultural collaboration with online content, something we really hadn't done. We'd done, a little bit. There was really no reason to do more prior to that for us. So one of the best successes, and that's what I always say, is try to find the successes in difficult times. And one of the best successes during the pandemic was this cultural online collaboration. So you're going to see here, Anna has put together some of the things that we've done. And it took us a while to realize that we had so much to share, because at first it was like, what are we going to talk about? But we've done a lot to appeal to young audiences. You'll see our registrar here reading books. We read a lot of railroad popular children's books. And you'll also see me in this slide talking about one of the rooms. One of the things we did was went through all the rooms in our National Historic Landmark. So those are a couple of the things that we did. Anna, you can go ahead to the next one. We did fun things. We don't want to we want to also share fun stories and not purely educational stories. So we did a series on ghost stories. We have a lot of ghosts at the depot. But we found every single person on our staff had to participate. And so our marketing coordinator also did story time. We had a new exhibit up. So our Jacob Masters did a series on our new exhibit. And of course, we talked about our historical stories as well, our canteen. So I just wanted, as moderator, to set the groundwork. Anna, would you like to go forward and talk about the Massillon Museum's programs?
Absolutely. So good morning, everyone. Like Wendy said, I am the administrative assistant at the Massillon Museum. We were really excited to participate in this partnership. We felt like it was very important, especially in this uncertain time, to really band together with other cultural centers and museums around us. And we had Brown Bag Lunch Series already as a program at the Massillon Museum. We decided to transition it to a digital format when this connection began, as it was becoming more unsafe for people to meet in person. The series normally takes place in our Gessner Hall every fourth Tuesday of the month at noon, which Tuesdays at noon are our Stark Tusk Museums Unite slot. We partnered with MCTV to broadcast the lectures on channels 21 and 621, in addition to hosting them on our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube channels. This really helped to widen our audience, as well as increase MassMu's accessibility initiatives, which is a great thing for us. Another digital initiative was working with artists to create virtual talks and studio visits, as we could not have in-person receptions. So far, we've interviewed and created content for our Studio M artists, Deborah Pinter, Paul Flippen, Adam Bernard, and Eileen Woods. We also had the pleasure of hosting Cut Up, Cut Out, which was a traveling exhibition curated by Carrie Lederer at the Bedford Gallery in California, which was originally set to open in April, but was pushed out to June 26th due to the Ohio's stay-at-home order. Because this exhibition's runtime was shorter, we decided to expand the included audio tour and pair it with our own installation shots and footage. Through this effort, we were able to expand our accessibility initiatives again and the exhibition's visual reach. It is now available to view for an infinite amount of time through our website and our YouTube page. Additionally, we did work with some cut-up artists, Donna Ruff, Francesca Pastine, and Brian Singer, to make artist vignettes that we posted on our social media pages in the weeks leading up to a Q&A that we hosted virtually on Facebook Live. This was an amazing opportunity presented to us that might not have otherwise happened, which we see as a pro of the pandemic, if you will. And of course, we love our Massillon Tigers and our football heritage at MassMu. So of course, we highlighted some of our favorite films from our Paul Brown collection. Some of our favorites, which received high engagements and shares on our social media pages, are Touchdown Town and Supporting Our Champions films. I also worked with the curator of football heritage, Bailey Yoder, to record a behind the scenes video of our Paul Brown film storage to accompany the Paul Brown and Massillon Tiger football heritage. Right after we found out that we were awarded the NEH Cares grant. Bailey also worked hard to create Massillon Tiger NFL draft trading cards, which consisted of player information, the year they were drafted from the Tigers, into which team, and some fun facts about each player as well. These received tons of love and are still available to view as a highlight on our Instagram page if you wanted to check that out. Some additional programs that we did at MassMU during our cultural connection and are still happening now. We did some highlights from our permanent collection as we were preparing for our grand opening right before the stay-at-home order went into effect. We were going to have a grand reopening of our permanent collections galleries. We finished renovations. That was supposed to happen on March 14th. We hosted a week-long MassMU fashion challenge where we asked our followers to find inspiration from our fashion plates from the 1800s through to the 1900s and post their own at-home creations, which was really fun to see what people came up with. Each day was a different year in fashion. This year we also had to reimagine our Island Party event, which is a huge event, an annual celebration, and thank you to the community for supporting us. We created and posted videos the week leading up to the virtual Island Party, which aired online and on MCTV channels with a performance from Carlos Jones and the Plus Band. We showed our followers how to make a perfect margarita, how to create your own backyard oasis, and even a fun tropical toucan tutorial for the kids. Other classes and workshops that have transitioned from in-person to virtual are our Do the Mew classes. We have a take-home edition, and those are posted at noon every first Saturday of the month. And those are available on our YouTube page. We also have our family and lunchtime yoga sessions are also available online as well. We have had yoga on the lawn since it's been nice the past couple weeks. So we're excited about that.
My dog just started barking, so I'm hoping he cuts it out. So at the Canton Museum of Art, oh my goodness. Stairs. I'm so sorry. When we started out with the cultural connection, we came up with a social media strategy that we previously had not had for each department. If you followed our museum on Facebook, you've probably seen our new series, Ask the, which is part of the cultural connection. And that's hosted by our Museum to Go and Education Outreach Coordinator, Nikki. She's been interviewing local artists, community members, and partners as our Wednesday edition. And that actually had evolved from our Museum to Go takeout, play on words with that. We already had a Museum to Go program used by schools, but the takeout version, she pre-recorded exercises that correlated with permanent collection pieces and exhibits. She really channeled a very Bob Ross meets Mr. Rogers feel. And they were activities that families could do together. And the issue with that was it was all based on past exhibits. So we only had so many exhibits that were canned as Museum to Go programming. So once those were all exhausted, that's how Ask the kind of formed, because we were like, okay, what's next? So the next slide, the dog's out of here now, talks about our Museum to Go takeout. So you can see some examples of pieces that are in our collection, and she would use those to walk everybody through different art projects every week. And it was a lot of work for her, but we seem to get a lot of traction with those. So it's something that we're hoping we can continue on as we get new exhibits. So moving on to the next slide, we developed a curator's couch. Part of how we broke up our weeks were Mondays and Tuesdays were curator's couch days. We have two curators, myself and our permanent collection curator, Kaylee, and we each had a day where we'd share things. We were very fortunate that our May exhibits, which were the ones that we installed right when everything shut down, we had an artist ceramic artist, great ceramic artist, who is very technology oriented. And I asked her if she could provide any content for us to be able to share her exhibit online when nobody could come into the building to see it. And she provided us with how her process for making decals on ceramics. And then she also shared a studio tour, which was very cool. And that kind of sparked, again, for us to start reaching out to some of our other artists from the permanent collection and ones that we have coming in for temporary exhibits to see if they would provide the same content. And Taylor Rovenal in that slide, she's the artist that kind of helped inspire some of our programming. And then Judith Brandon is actually on exhibit right now, and she shared a really cool studio tour, and we've shared it all on our YouTube and our Facebook social media. And I know Judy's video is probably the most watched thing that we've posted. So going on to the next slide, we have an art therapist on staff. We're very fortunate to have this program involved with our museum, Art for Health and Healing, and Amy Hope is our art therapist. She saw a need because everyone was stuck at home. Mental health is obviously a priority for so many people right now. And she worked with what we had on exhibit, and again, pieces from our permanent collection, to develop art exercises and meditations that people could do from home. And it's been amazing. I know she did one for an exhibit in May where she took one of the pieces from the exhibit and you kind of walk through that landscape painting, and very therapeutic and calming. So next slide. Some of the additional programming that we've had, we incorporated virtual opening receptions because no one could come into the museum. And that's definitely been a learning curve for us. They're hosted by myself and Kaylee, and we had no equipment at the museum, virtually nothing. We didn't even have a reliable digital camera. So we were equipped with a cart that we nicknamed Nigel, a selfie stick, and iPhones. And we recorded the first one in May as a Facebook Live on one phone. The other phone had the artist's family from California on FaceTime, so we could kind of show both of us, because this was before we even got to where we could do the Zoom membership. And we were able to engage with the family and create a really unique and fun experience for our viewers. And I was just looking before this session, and I realized that that has reached 5,400 views on that video alone, which is huge for us. Additionally, we've had 360-degree virtual exhibit tours, which we've always offered, but we've expanded those. I think they've been something that was missed frequently on our website because they are used for part of the Museum to Go program. Typically, they're only the permanent collection exhibits, but because of the circumstances, we've actually expanded those to include all 4 of our current exhibits, and also use voiceover so that you get a deeper, more enriched experience. And we were fortunate enough that Nikki, again, our outreach coordinator, her fiance is actually a sound engineer, so it helped in that sense that they could do a lot of that at home with that equipment because we didn't have it. And we also had School of Art at Home, so we hosted virtual classes through the summer, which were actually very well received, and we weren't sure what to expect, but they did really well over the summer. I know coming into the fall, there's a little bit of a lag of people wanting more virtual content. We all kind of want to get out in person, but we offered that, and we had summer art camp, which we also hosted in person, but it's typically in June. We had to bump that to July because of the circumstances so we could monitor, see how everything was going to go. So we did decide to do a virtual summer art camp in June where for a week, for an hour a day, kids met with a licensed teacher, art educator, and created some amazing projects. They picked up kits from the art museum that they then took home and used all those supplies. And my kids did it. They loved it. Their only complaint was that it wasn't long enough in the day. Okay, so the 360-degree tours, we actually, this is another circumstantial, like, stars aligned situation. We actually created those. We have a docent that works or volunteers at the museum who is a firefighter for the city of Canton, and he also has a business on the side, I want to say it's called Herbsea, and he comes in with his equipment and he does the 360. He shoots the still shots of the galleries and then splices it all together, and he gives it to us. He's trying to start his business, so he gives us a discount because of his affiliation with us as well. So again, that's been a really great connection to have throughout all of this. So I think I've covered it all. I think we're on to Kim.
Hi, everybody. As I'm sure with all of you, before all of this happened, you had a Facebook page, you have a website, but it's really nobody's job to actually do it because we all have small staffs and we don't have enough people. So that was the situation that we were in, in January and February. All of us were posting. It was kind of haphazard. And when we closed and we had this partnership, it really gave us a chance to focus on this social media thing that we really should have been doing all along. So our time slot was Mondays at noon. And I remember that day, Wendy, when we all talked the first time, and I was like, I think it was maybe 11 o'clock on Monday. And I said, we'll take Mondays. And we went down to Discover World and we did a live shot for our very first thing. And one of the tips that I can give you is to pay attention to the noises in the background, because the waterfall in Discover World looked really great, but it turned out that the sound was a little bit problematic. So we soon discovered that having just one time slot a week was not enough, because once we went home, everybody wanted to do something. And so we ended up having each department take a different day. So we did our regular cultural connection post still on Mondays at noon, and then we each took a different time slot during the week, Monday through Saturday. So we really flooded our page with content during that time so that we could stay in front of our visitors while we weren't open. Next slide. So Tales from the Negatives. This series is by our archivist, Mark Holland, and it is an example of how we were really forced to look at collections from our archives and other places in the museum and really make them shine. So artifacts that typically are not shown or put on the back burner were brought to the forefront. So Tales from the Negatives is something that he's continued to do. And on the right, we do a kind of, he goes out into the community, and this is a very obvious one because President McKinley's home was where the Stark County Library main branch is, but he does this all over Canton, where he'll take a picture from the past and take it to wherever it looks now and put a photo on Facebook. Our Astro Adventures, our planetarium remains closed. We are dabbling in opening on a very limited basis in a couple of weeks. It's a 65-seat planetarium, but we're going to try it with 10 people. So because the planetarium is really not accessible right now, we are continuing the Astro Adventures. So our planetarium director talks about the current night sky, news from space, and then she follows up when she posts the Astro Adventures, which is a video. Down in the bottom right, you can see that her head's cut off there, but she talks in that, and I believe she films this in Zoom. And she follows that post up with printable worksheets that we don't create. They're public domain worksheets that have to do with whatever she's talked about for the Astro Adventures. So Fossil Fridays, this is a series that we actually had before the pandemic, but in quarantine, the Discover World staff had a lot more time to focus on this series and to enhance it. So this is something that we've been doing for a while, but we kind of were able to focus a little bit more on that. And that is Bondo Betty. And she's a mastodon that was unearthed not too far from the museum. So she's a Stark County girl. So additional programs that we did, the program that I did, my series was called Fashion Distraction, and it combined two programs that I already did. One was called Feminine Fashion, the other's called Mentioning the Unmentionables. And I combined them to do a timeline sort of series of women's fashion over time. And in the first few that I did, I had used Zoom just a few times and didn't really understand it quite yet. And so I literally just filmed it on my phone with my laptop, showing my slides in PowerPoint. So it was very quaint, and a couple people said, "Oh, it was so adorable, you trying to do this." I didn't like that I was doing that, so I did a few of them that way, and then I kind of buckled down and was like, okay, how does this Zoom thing work? So I learned how to do that, and then I finished the series with a little bit more professional look than I started it with. Wild Wednesdays is also something that we had done prior to quarantine, but we discovered during quarantine that we could do a little bit better than what we had done in the past, and that people love animal videos. So our Discover World staff did a lot of Meet the Animals videos during that time, and people really like to see our interaction with the animals. So there was a lot of opportunities for us to do that with Wild Wednesdays. We did some stories behind the artifacts. So the collections department did its first social media post just after we reopened. And our goal there was to share some of the stories behind the individual objects that currently are not told in their setting. So if you've been to our museum, we have the Street of Shops, which is an indoor town, and none of the artifacts are interpreted. The setting of the doctor's office or the setting of the Dana Miller store is what we're interpreting. So the audio buttons talk generally about those types of places, but we don't single out any artifacts, and there are literally thousands of things in those displays. So that's what our collections manager wants to focus on more, is doing the stories behind those artifacts. So she started with the doctor's bag in the doctor's office. So it's kind of just sitting at the mannequin's feet. And so she was able to go into that space and film herself and to talk a little bit more about that actual doctor's bag. We had done mini documentaries before, but during this process, we discovered Adobe Sparks, and that greatly improved the way that we were able to do those mini documentaries. We created two, one on Mercy Hospital and one on Altman Hospital, which was a way for us to kind of show our support for healthcare workers and the people on the front lines during the pandemic. So our museum shop, assistant museum shop manager, did some book read aloud. So we used books that are sold in our shop that we could use both to entertain younger visitors, but also give parents some resources that were focused on learning. And then we also were hopeful that people would purchase the book on our online shop. So our assistant museum shop manager read the books aloud, and she got permission from the publishers in order to do that. And it's a little bit different depending on the publisher and what kind of book you're trying to read. And almost all of them said it was okay, but it had to expire over a certain amount of time. So some of them said it could only be on our Facebook page for a few days. A couple said it could be a couple weeks, but none of them wanted them on for more than a month. So we were very sensitive to make sure that we did the right thing with that. She's filmed those in Zoom and then edited them with iMovie or Adobe Sparks. And we found that with both the book read alouds and really anything that we do, the things that are the most popular are the things that we do that are related to Ohio or Stark County. So we want to, moving forward, make sure that we kind of focus on those types of things because that's what people like to see from us. So finally, we were able to hire a digital learning specialist. And our assistant museum shop manager finished her degree in distance learning, her master's degree in distance learning in May. So it was a really perfect timing for us. What actually happened was we were hiring for an assistant education director, and we had narrowed it down to 2 people, and we hired the other person for that job, and then we decided that we would create a job for Brandy because we knew that this digital learning thing was something that we all needed help with, and it was her skill set. So we were able to do that. And because this is kind of a COVID, it's not kind of, it's a COVID-19 related position. You know, we were moving in that direction extremely slowly, but we were not there yet. And so when we applied for some emergency funding at the Stark Community Foundation, we asked for salary for a part-time digital learning specialist, and we did get that money. So if you've got something locally that is COVID related and you want to hire somebody, even paying an intern to help you with some of the tech aspects of this, it can be related to COVID and emergency funding for you. So she is teaching all of us about all the different platforms that are available. And I admit, you know, I'm an old dog trying to learn a new trick here. And, you know, she's very patient with all of us. Her goal is to empower us so that we can do some of these things ourselves. And she is willing to, you know, advise anybody if anybody wants to reach out to her. Her name is Brandy Smith, and you can find her contact information on our website. And right now, what we're trying to do is to monetize some of these things, because our partnership programs that we're talking about today are all free. And as you all know, we're not able to do our in-person events quite yet, and all of our budgets are a disaster. So we are trying to see what we can do to enhance some of those things so that we can charge for them. So we just last week did a virtual escape room. It was a week ago this past Thursday, and it was a lot of fun. We had a few tech glitches, but nobody was upset by the end of it. And that was our fall fundraiser. Normally we have a big in-person party and it's a lot of fun, and the virtual escape room replaced that, and it was still fun. I mean, it was fewer people that attended, but we still made budget with our sponsorships. So some of the things moving forward, we're experimenting this month. Our Soup at 6 series is a lecture with soup for dinner. It's actually at 6, and people ask us what time is soup at 6 all the time. And we're partnering with Deli Ohio so that our participants can pay us for their ticket. They can go pick up soup, bring it home, and then watch a program. So we're working on experimenting with that in October and November. So I think that's it for me, and I'll turn it over to Jenny.
Morning, everybody. So at First Lady's National Historic Site, we, like everyone else, were closed during the pandemic. We had a little interesting, a slightly different little issue because we work in federal buildings. We're partners with the National Park Service, so our buildings are federal buildings, which meant when the pandemic started and we closed our sites, we couldn't go back. So everything that we had to do from home. The other thing that was important to us was that we had, obviously, like many of our peers, had already planned our programs for the remainder of the year and through the pandemic. And we had contracted lots of speakers and researchers and education people to help us with those programs. And we felt really bad about the idea of potentially canceling or postponing those, because we knew that they were dependent on not only the income from those, but of doing that work as well. And so we quickly were trying to modify what we were doing to determine what would work best for us, and then what would work best for all of these contracted educational support people. And like many have said, we didn't have equipment. More importantly, we weren't even on site. If we had equipment, we didn't have it with us. I know that a couple of us were borrowing selfie sticks from our children and using our phones and so forth to try to produce content and so forth for ourselves. So it was an interesting conundrum, and I have to take a moment to actually say thank you to all of our staffs, right? So everybody had to be nimble and to quickly adapt to this pandemic and to how we were going to function and operate our normal jobs, let alone then trying to determine how we were going to produce all of these programs now in a virtual environment, in a virtual world. And I think they did a fantastic job, especially again with limited resources. So some of the programs that we did, you can see here, our legacy lectures are very popular on site. We have an interesting opportunity because 80+% of our audience who comes to the site are not locals. They're from all across the United States, all across the state of Ohio. And so they, love the opportunity that when we started putting all of our programs virtually, on social media and on our website and so forth, that they could then participate. So we definitely saw a huge increase in participation. So we did continue to bring in speakers to continue our programming and themed around our themes for the year, which for us was the election, First Ladies on the Campaign Trail, women's right to vote with the centennial of the women's right to vote, and breaking the glass ceiling, which was about women who've run for president. Next slide. So like many of our peers, we knew that there were children at home because many of us had children at home. And so we wanted to find opportunities to educate and engage with those audiences. And again, continue our normal programming routines. So we just flipped our ABC with FLOTUS, Fun with FLOTUS, and our Ladies in the Lab to be virtual. Now, a lot of those were activities and reading. So if there were activities related to it, we would provide a list of things that you would need, and these would all be ingredients that you could find right there in your home, hopefully, or that Amazon could deliver, or you could get maybe from a local store if you needed to really quickly. And so that you could still participate and do these activities at home. That sort of graduated a little bit, especially our Ladies in the Lab kits now are kits that we ship out from the site so that as they become more complex, like we're doing robots and so forth, we're sending those materials out now. Next slide, please. Talk with the Curator was an interesting flip for us. This is a program that really sort of requires you to be in person, because we actually bring the artifacts out and allow the guests to interact with the artifacts, sometimes even touch the artifacts, but it's a very hands-on tactile program. But we knew it was a popular program, and again, we wanted to continue it, and it helps support, again, our exhibits. So we did transition Talk with the Curator to a virtual program, but we had to sort of reconfigure what we want to do, because some objects don't work so well to show or talk about in this virtual environment, especially textiles, when we want to talk really specific about those textiles. So we had to switch some of those. And then that turned into what we are calling curated pieces, which then again allowed us to talk specifically, like Kim suggested, about pieces that particularly that exist in our environments, but maybe we don't interpret in that environment. Which then led us to virtual exhibit tours. So when we opened the museum back up, we had 3 exhibits that we were opening, the ones I mentioned earlier. But we knew that we were limited on the people that could come, especially again, because our visitorship comes from out of state. So we started doing these sort of teasers to our exhibits. We would do a quick walkthrough of the exhibit, but then we would focus on a particular object, 2 or 3, and talk about those and within the context of the exhibit and why they were so important. Next slide. So probably the most interesting I think program for us was our Badass Women's film series. So these were films that we would show on site in our theater. And we thought, well, how do we do this? This is going to be really interesting. So we talked with our partner, Stark Library and the Ohio Library Network, about what could we do about this. And they raised their hand and said, we can help with this. And so they have access to films and can provide access to films to people within the county and within the state. And so we transitioned that program into a really fun partnership between the library and then whoever we initially planned to intend to partner with for the films. So for instance, we showed this film called Wonder Women. And so the library provided access to people for that film. And then we, at some point during the week, you could watch that film. We had a lecture then with the director of that film. And then we just most recently this past week did the film She Did That, which is about African-American entrepreneurship. And so we partnered with Canton Girls Gang and 2 female Black business owners right here in Stark County to talk about what does that look like locally and how can we support that. So I feel like that was such a fantastic transition of what could have been really challenging or frankly a program we might have needed to cancel. Game night and First Ladies nights is our craft nights and art nights and so forth. So we transitioned all of those online. And cooking with First Ladies, we had already been doing, but had not picked up a whole lot of traction. And now that program has picked up phenomenal traction, and it's produced by a woman who loves cooking and loves First Lady recipes and does it for us from out of state. And so now we're actually transitioning that to doing a how-to live program with her. So we're super excited about that. And so I would say for us, like everyone else, we used Adobe Spark, iProducts to create and produce. As we went along, we had to purchase equipment so that we could provide the best quality for each piece that we did. So it was noted we needed microphones that could pick up sound better or silence things better. And we needed more than just using our iPhones to videography and so forth. Or like others have mentioned, we needed to bring in then somebody who had better experience and knowledge of those things and could help us with it. So that was definitely for us something that became really important. And I think we'll all continue, like many of our programs, will probably continue in this virtual environment moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, ladies, for all that great information. And we do have some questions we'd like to pose to you. And the first would be, if you could pick, just highlight 2 of the long-term benefits, the outstanding benefits from this program. I know one of our underlying themes is finding success within challenging times. And just for us, I would share that 2 of the successes that came out of this initiative was that now we have a very structured social media schedule with calendars. We didn't have that before. So now we have that, and that is going to continue on. So that sort of was a gift. And the second thing I'd say that was a highlight for us was that we created our own YouTube channel, which we did not have before, and we posted many of these online videos to that. So those were 2 successes that will continue long-term for us, so we're excited about that. Anna, do you want to start and share if you have a couple really long-term successes out of this?
Yeah, and I was wondering if I could go over the Pro Football Hall of Fame
oh, sure.
as well.
I cut right in. Yeah, forgot about that. Go ahead.
So before I answer that, I want to speak on behalf of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, because they were also a part of the Cultural Connection. They were Fridays at noon. And so the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Youth and Education Department participated in the Stark Tusk Museums Unite program over the spring and summer to educate students, teachers, and fans all across the country, the county, state, and country. The Hall of Fame team covered many educational topics, including careers in the NFL, the Walter Payton Man of the Year award, the story of pro football and media in the NFL. The team also got to interview many special guests, including Hall of Fame staff members David Baker and Joe Horrigan. We also had the opportunity to sit down with Joe Horrigan to discuss the history of the NFL and the military, John Kendall to discuss the history of the NFL draft, training camp, and Stark County's ties to the Hall of Fame. And Jason Akins talked about some breakable NFL records that could fall in the NFL's 2020 season. The team was excited to present all of these great programs and showcase the great Hall of Fame Museum. I will stop sharing my screen. And then Wendy, could you repeat that question again? So sorry.
Yeah, I think all of us are looking for successes in this challenging time. And if each of you, each of our speakers could maybe highlight 2. And as I shared, ours were that now we have a very structured social media schedule with specific calendars and specific assignments that we always did not have before. And I think our second really tangible success item would be that we created a YouTube channel. And now all these videos that we're creating, we're posting on our YouTube channel, which is getting a lot of traffic. So Anna, let's start with you.
Yeah, that was one of the things when I started at MassMU in December. I kind of wanted to help with social media pages for curated content, make it more cohesive. And so this gave me the opportunity to have a little bit of extra time to really sit down and look at everything from the beginning until when I started, to kind of analyze what was going on, which was really helpful and awesome. We also started a structured social media calendar and kind of a format for different posts, when to post them, how many times to post them. So, talking with all the staff and collaborating was really fun. Kind of getting ideas of what everybody thought the community would like to see. So that was really awesome too, to really get to collaborate with the staff, especially for me, since I was still pretty new when we had to go home and lock up. I was only at MSB for 3 months then. So I really got to connect with a lot of different parts of the museum and pieces of the museum. So I think that was a success as well. We also were able to upgrade our Zoom account to include webinars to stream on Facebook Live and YouTube as well, which is awesome for us. So we're going to obviously continue to be doing that. So that was just a couple of our successes. I could go on, but I'll let somebody else talk.
Christy, how about you?
Well, I think, a lot of it echoes what Anna just said. It opened up an opportunity. Like I said, we had very little tech at the museum at the start of all this, not even a digital camera. We had a few stand lights to help for photo shoots. One of them was very busted. So it was kind of like we could piecemeal a few things to make things happen. But so it really made us kind of focus and analyze what would serve us best. And we've started to slowly get some better supplies, but really a lot of what we did was using, like I said, a selfie stick and an iPhone. We did also do the Zoom with webinar feature. So, but otherwise, I think really we reincarnated our YouTube channel. We had one, but it had been used by a previous marketing director, hadn't really been used recently. So now it's back. We had to seek a password before we could use it. But also with the social media calendar, we had nothing. So now every department's kind of sharing something on certain days. And then idea share was huge. I mean, I was saying when we did our practice run of this session, I think that when Anna was putting together the PowerPoint and everybody was submitting what programs they did, seeing it in that list, I immediately started looking at certain things. I'm like, hey, we can do this too. So just connecting with everyone and that visibility and adapting ideas to fit your individual institution.
Great. Thanks, Kim.
I would echo what Christy said too, that, it's great to see what everybody else is doing, gives you ideas, because I mean, the best thing about the museum field is that we steal from each other all the time and it's perfectly okay. So it's really a great way to get some ideas. And I think for us, we're having conversations now, nobody knows when we can do in-person things again. And I think some people on our staff are sort of thinking, once we can do things in person, we're just not going to do this virtual stuff anymore. But that's not what's going to happen. This stuff is here to stay. It's about access, and it's about making sure that people that can't normally come to our museum can do it. So I think our biggest sort of takeaway is that some of the things that were super scary when we started are not that scary once you understand how the software works. And like I said in my segment, I'm an old dog trying to learn a new trick, and I'm kicking and screaming a little bit to do this, but we're all savvy enough to understand that this is not something that is just quarantine related. This is something we all should have been doing, moving towards all along. And I think it's a wake-up call for the museums, especially those of us who are small, that were, it was nobody's job before, so we didn't really focus on it, and it's something that's here to stay. So I think that it's important for everybody that's on this call to really, if you're not doing it, to start, because it's not going to stop when COVID stops. So, learn now so that you can be part of, the future of what we're going to be doing all together here.
Great points. Jennifer, do you have a couple tangible successes you'd like to share?
Well, it's hard. I mean, I think everybody said everything already, so I don't want to repeat everything that they
Right.
said. I think that's really just important. Somebody asked this question in the chat too about us connecting together. I think that really was important part that came out of this too. I would say I'm newer to Stark County and working with a lot of these organizations, but I didn't find that we tended to work together a whole lot. And so I thought it was a great way to sort of bring us all together in a new way and in a refreshing way. And it was super supportive. So, and this is one of the byproducts of things that came out of that, but just even conversations of how we were managing and what we were doing as far as reopening and so forth. So I think at least building this partnership, this team together of these museums was super helpful, not just for those of us who were sitting in the meetings like Wendy and Kim, you and I, but as it trickled down to our staff and how it supported them and connected dots with their colleagues and peers across that too. So I thought that was really fantastic.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. And what we did beyond online collaboration is that we had some regular phone calls with our museum directors, and that was just hugely helpful. You know, like, what are you doing? What's happening? And it just made us all feel calm and more knowledgeable, and it just was a great thing. So if you aren't connecting, you know, with your regional museums, that's something I would suggest. We actually have a question that's on the chat that I'm going to direct to Anna. And the question is, did creating and using the hashtag that we had, Stark Tusk Museums Unite, could you tell if that helped increase our social media following, and was there any paid promotions done using that hashtag?
So the hashtag, I believe that it helped a lot. It was an easy way for you or the viewer to just click on and see everything that fell underneath that hashtag, whether it was from, you know, Denison or First Ladies or, you know, McKinley, pro football. So it was really nice on Instagram and Facebook, and also YouTube does the same thing. So anything that, you know, if you type that in on any of those platforms, all of that stuff that's tagged with that should come up. So, you know, it did increase our audience and engagement. I definitely saw higher numbers, especially, you know, the height of the stay-at-home order. Engagements were up on, you know, all across the board. A lot of the higher engagements for Mass Mu fell with, you know, a lot of the Paul Brown and Massillon Tiger football. I know a lot of people were really worried about not being able to, you know, watch sports, participate in sports, didn't know what was going on. So we did see very high numbers for that. And then as for paid promotions, I can only speak to, you know, the Massillon Museum. We did not do any boosts or paid promotions on any platform, but I felt like we didn't really need to. And we were all doing a really great job of, you know, making sure that we were doing shout outs to the other partners. I know that I would be posting on our stories like, hey, make sure you turn into, you know, First Ladies or Canton Museum, you know, all of that, you know, every single day of the week, which is an important thing as well. I know that we have so many different things going on that have spilled outside of our assigned cultural connection time. But it was nice to have that routine Monday through Saturday, you know, Monday being McKinley, Tuesday being Mass Mu, Wednesday being Canton Museum of Art, Thursday National First Ladies, Friday Pro Football, and then Saturday being Denison, all at the same time, noon. So it was really nice to know that no matter what day of the week it was, you could tune in and see something from a really amazing connection. So
We did not do any paid boosts or advertising either. Did anyone else? Any of our other panelists? It's a great example of very low budget, great success. I have one more question for you. Everybody has talked about, you know, learning new skills, and for us, we learned from the bottom up, and many of you have shared that. But I'm curious if you learned anything that you'd want to share about your staff or your institution. I will tell you one of the most interesting things out of this was seeing our staff grow around this, because we really didn't have an idea of who would be involved in these kind of activities or promotions. And some folks really rose to the top. Like Jacob Masters just started doing these swing series, and he was entertaining and he enjoyed it and he loved it. So one of the things we learned is we found these skills from our staff that we really hadn't tapped into. Shame on us. And now, well, we're not going to let that go, So I'm wondering if any of you found anything surprising, beneficial about your staff or institution that you didn't know before. And I would just open up to whoever would like to speak.
I mentioned when I was talking about our programming, we had no idea that our outreach coordinator, her fiance, had all this sound equipment in their house. So that was huge, because Nikki, because she has we just all fell in love with her voice when she does the voiceovers. We're like, hey, do you want to do it for the virtual tours? And it wasn't so much that we didn't want to do it as curators, but we're like, you already have this voice. And then when she also said, well, I already have this equipment at my house, we're like, oh my gosh, then yeah, obviously, if you're willing. So we have been paying her fiance, to help us, but just the fact that there's, who knew? We wouldn't have even known.
Right.
And then developing, I know I've honed I had always kind of played around with iMovies on my phone with videos of my kids, but I was able to kind of use that to create a virtual slideshow with voiceover from one of the artists, his wife, talking about the art and everything. So things like that I would not have done pre-COVID, that now, we're all kind of expanding our learning on so many sides of tech.
There are these opportunities under our nose that, we didn't see. Anyone else have something they want to share? Okay, well, with that, I do need to remind you all that this session is recorded, and it'll be posted in a few weeks so that you'll be able to watch us again if you'd like. But I would like to thank all of our panelists for doing a great job, and thank everybody for their support of the Ohio Local History Alliance. There's another session left today, and then we're on to the award ceremony. So I hope to see you there. Thanks very much. Enjoy your weekend.